Let's just get something straight. There is no such thing as surviving a layoff. Stick around and I'll tell you more. Hey everybody, it's Brian from Life After Layoff, and I want to talk about this concept of surviving a layoff that I've been seeing kind of used pervasively over the last 18 months as more and more companies participate in these multiple rounds of layoffs. And the underwriting current I see from people who don't get their name selected for that first round of layoffs is that, I'm so happy that I survived. But the reality is that nobody actually survives a layoff. Everybody's affected by it. And the most baffling part about it is that these companies who conduct these layoffs expect to go back to business as usual as if nothing happened. But in reality, it's this massive trauma that happens. People that you used to know so closely are no longer there. You don't even have a chance to say goodbye to them. And essentially, it's just a fractured situation. It's like having this brutal crime happen behind closed doors. You hear all this commotion and all this noise, and then they come in acting like nothing ever happened, and they're like back to business as usual. Yeah, sure, they probably address the elephant in the room, but they expect that things will just go back the way they were. The whole time, the people who are surviving feel like they've dodged a bullet. They're just happy to have a job. But at the end of the day, there's a true severing of this relationship because it's such a brutal experience for everybody involved. So essentially, the workplace will never be the same. I mean, one day you're working with all these people that you used to know and love, and the next day they're gone. You don't have any closure. You don't even get to say goodbye. And the reality really sinks in when you realize that most of the work is still there. They still have the same expectations of the same output. Your customers certainly expect the same thing, whether it's an internal customer or an external customer. You may have gone from having a decent workload, a regular normal workload, to all of a sudden it being doubled overnight. I mean, you can't complain about it because you literally just saw people getting their lives torn apart by these layoffs. So there's this idea, well, you should just be happy to have a job. And while nobody may say anything out loud for fear of being on the next layoff list, there's no possible way that the culture that was established beforehand can be the same. There's no more, well, I know that my boss has got my back. I know that the company is in good standing. It doesn't even matter if your company is making money. In fact, it almost seems like if your company is making good money, it's more likely that you're going to get laid off in today's market. I can't tell you how many companies I've seen that have been very profitable. They announce all these major deals that get signed, and then all of a sudden they're completely cutting their workforces. Let's face it, there's no such thing as security anymore in today's workplace. And the reason why I bring this up is really two major things. First one being that there was this layoff that you may have heard about recently at LinkedIn, where there were, I think it was like 600 or 700 people got laid off, and there was a list of people that was leaked to the employee population through some public server. A lot of people in the engineering department apparently caught wind of it. The list was being like this mysterious list of names that happened to show up on one of their shared communication channels, and they were sharing this list around. People were wondering why their names or whose names were on there, and if your name is on the list, what it actually meant. I guess somebody must have made a big boo-boo in the human resource department and leaked this list, because it went out on a Friday. I guess by Sunday it was scrubbed from the server, and then the IT department made up some like lame excuse about, oops, it looks like some people were having some communication issues on our system. But sure enough, everybody that was on that list, I think it was like 500 or 600 names on it, everybody was on that list. Come Monday, they all got laid off. This just happened. So it's, you even got companies like LinkedIn where, all this stuff is well publicized about companies behaving poorly, behaving badly, laying people off in the most just questionable ways. Your badge doesn't swipe anymore, and that's how you find out, or you get just locked out of your equipment, or these mass layoffs through Zoom or pre-recorded. It's like everybody still has a job, raise their hand, and not so fast, Bob. It's almost like what they're doing nowadays, because there's been so much bad press with all these companies behaving poorly. I mean, I've talked a little bit about them on my channel, but I mean, you can just, if you pay it at all attention what's going on in the market, you'll see it. But of all companies making a big faux pas like this, it's like, come on, LinkedIn, like really, like do better. And I saw some people on LinkedIn announcing that they had been laid off by LinkedIn through a LinkedIn post. And what they essentially said was, well, I survived the first 2 or 3 rounds of these layoffs. This final one finally got me. And again, that's what I started thinking, like, there's no such thing as surviving a layoff. If you look around your organization and they're laying people off left and right, and especially if they're doing it in kind of questionable ways, and they're saying all these buzzwords, you're in these town hall meetings and they're saying everything is going great, we're not thinking layoffs, we're just slowing some things down. I've made videos on like warning signs to look for and all this stuff. But if they're saying these types of things, yet their actions, like, look at the actions of the company versus what they say. Because if they say all these things, and they said all these things in previous rounds of layoffs, yet they turn around and lay their people off, what does that tell you about the corporate culture and about the trustworthiness? Frankly, there's no trust left in these organizations. They'll say one thing and then do the complete opposite. Pay attention to what a company does versus what they say they're going to do. In addition to that, I also know some people personally who have also experienced layoffs. And it was kind of the same thing, the same idea. I didn't see it coming was the common thing that I heard from multiple people. I didn't see it coming. And that's where I was kind of thinking, how could you not see it coming? Again, they've done these multiple rounds of layoffs. You've seen other people who were not performance related getting laid off in departments, people that you knew very closely. And they would say things like, well, I thought I was safe. I survived this round and surely they had a good fit for me somewhere. I would actually be more paranoid at that point in time because I just saw them lop all the people that I used to know and used to work with very closely, and I knew that they weren't performance issues. So how could you possibly feel comfortable in that case? So if you're in a situation where your company is doing these massive layoffs, especially if they're doing it in a way that is very kind of questionable, you should be very concerned about your stability in your organization. And I'm not suggesting that you should be panicked and you should be running around like Chicken Little Skies Falling, but you should be very pragmatic and you should be taking proactive steps to update your resume and to start working on the networking, start doing the things that you need to do to start to protect yourself. Because at the end of the day, your company has proven that they don't have your back. There is not that level of trust. All this team building where they have people fall backward and you're going to catch them. I mean, after all this, I don't know if I would trust falling backward and hoping that somebody on my team is going to catch me because they've proven that they won't. I also came across this TikTok that I thought was kind of crazy, and this person, now this is a few months old, so kind of bear with, but it's the same concept. She gets laid off. She gets laid off over Zoom, and you got to listen to this.
Everyone knows, we've been dealing with some pretty drastic changes in the business, as most of you saw, and I'm sure heard yesterday. We had to, shut down the teleservices division of the business, which was over 800 people impacted by that change, and so that's a really drastic shift in the business, and unfortunately, it requires us to do the same from the corporate perspective. I want to make sure you all understand that this is, a widespread corporate action that's taking place today. Unfortunately, today will be your last day with the organization.
Due to the impact that this ruling has had on the business, it's a big impact, and at this time, we are unable to offer severance to any of the people impacted in this.
Thanks, Joni. I've really enjoyed getting to know all of you, and wish you all, the very best, and I hope we get to talk soon.
Well, that's exactly what happened.
I mean, it's absolutely incredible that one day you're working, everything is great. The next day, they literally call everybody into a town hall meeting. They end up laying everybody off. And then in this case, she doesn't even get severance from it. And then they act like everything is the normal. They're going to go back to their normal day. The survivors of this organization, how can you look at all the people that were just exited the business and feel confident about your survival in that organization? Even if you are truly on a do not lay off list, I got to be thinking to myself, like, man, the way that they handled this, the way that they've treated those people, why would I ever feel comfortable and confident about my work situation there? So if it's me, I'm absolutely updating my resume. I am doing all the things necessary to start to position myself to act like the free agent. And if I'm interviewing for a new company, you better bet that I'm going to be doing my due diligence on, have they had layoffs in the past? How are they handled? How long ago were the layoffs? And for the positions that I'm being interviewed for, were those positions affected in the last round of layoff? In other words, did they lay off a bunch of, I see this like really frequently with recruiters. They'll lay off a bunch of full-time recruiters, and then 3 months later or 4 months later, they're posting the same damn jobs again and going back out to market to replace it. And I know the people that had gotten laid off were effective recruiters, but they basically just wiped out. It's like these knee-jerk reactions that the first moment, it's almost bizarre how all of these companies all at the same time have all decided to do these knee-jerk reactions, get rid of all of this staff, and then suddenly, 6 months later, they're all hiring back. Like there was some guy that had posted on my LinkedIn about evidence that the job market was coming screaming back, in particular tech. And I appreciate his enthusiasm. I mean, I think he had a vested interest in it because he was a guy that was a recruiter for RPO or something. So like basically like recruiters for recruiters, they hire recruiters. And so he was showing all these recruiter postings from like Meta and some other big companies, and a lot of them were contract positions. And I'm just sitting there shaking my head going, these are the exact same positions that and I didn't click into the job postings to confirm, but I saw several of them were contract positions. So they took a full-time job, lopped the headcount, then 6 months later or 3 months later, they are replacing that headcount with a contract position, part-time, probably paying them 40% of the original rate and no benefits eligible and all this stuff. And, I'm just sitting here thinking, like, if I'm interviewing for that Meta job, how could I possibly feel confident about my chances long-term? Like, you can't put a stake in the ground anymore like you used to. Back in the the good old days, back in the 50s, 60s, my grandfather's grandfather, back in that era, people worked. They would start at a job, they would maybe work one, maybe two employers in their entire career. They would last for 30 years, they would collect the pension, and they would ride off into the sunset. And that world has been completely shattered. It doesn't even exist anymore. And nowadays, it's like you're lucky if you get a year into an organization. I saw somebody, she had posted that she had been laid off like 3 or 4 times in 1 year. And it was like, I know she was not a bad performer. So I'm sitting there just thinking, like, how can you even get traction in a career these days when companies are just laying people off left and right? And it's like literally at the first sign of the market going sideways. These companies, the knee-jerk reaction, they lay everybody off and then they come back a few months later. It's like, where's the accountability at that level for these decisions that are being made? Because there's people's lives that are being drastically affected. And I unfortunately know some people who have, I don't really want to mention it in this video, but I know people that have taken some pretty permanent steps, and it's a real thing, and this mental health impact and all this stuff is a real thing. So again, there's the purpose of this video is really to bring it all back to one place. Is there's no such thing as a survivor of a layoff. If you see your company is laying people off, that should be a huge red flag for you, an indicator for you to start to act at very minimum defensively, but probably more offensively, where if I'm truly the CEO of my career, truly acting like a free agent, I am now aggressively looking at my options and knowing my company's played their cards. I know that they are not a trustworthy, loyal employer because they literally just showed me that they aren't. So there shouldn't, the words "I was caught off guard" should be removed from your vocabulary. They're giving you plenty of notice. They're giving you plenty of opportunity for you to go off and start to strengthen your resume and get your networking in order and all the stuff that you need to do, get it done. Do not think that you are too special, too unique, too precious or whatever, that you can't be on the next round of layoffs and you'd be saying like, well, I didn't see it coming, because this is your warning. So I appreciate you following along my little rant here, but I do implore you to start to take true stock of, how is your resume looking? How is your networking going? What's the true status of your job and the industry you're in and the company that you work for? Have they laid off before? These are all the things that I'd be considering. If you're going into a new interview, again, I would be asking those questions. I'd be certainly assessing, how did you handle layoffs before? Is this position a position that was previously laid off? How long ago was it? Is it the same level, same all those conditions? If I'm trying to truly act like the CEO of my career, I'm probably challenging them on, why is this position being replaced so soon? Because you make a decision, especially to leave an organization to go to a new company, and I mean, there's lots of people's stories about how they leave organizations, take a new job, and within a month they're getting laid off and they're screwed on both ends. They lost the old job that they were at that was steady, they lost the new job, and now they're unemployed. And I've seen all these really just crappy stories, and that stuff just it annoys me. So long story short, take ownership of your career, start acting like the CEO, and do the necessary things. Don't get caught off guard. If you need help getting back on your feet, I have a website and I've got some training courses and all of that kind of stuff that you can check out if you head over to lifeafterlayoff.com. Anyway, appreciate you going through this long meandering ramble. I didn't have a script for this one. It was just kind of me reacting to some things that I'd seen, some conversations that I've had with some people, and just noticing the LinkedIn layoff and then these other layoff videos. So act like a free agent, act like the CEO of your career, and I'm here to help. Appreciate you watching. We'll see you next time.